Hey, why not invite the world, our more power user audience, into the behind the scenes that happens as I analyze and prepare for a video such as the one I'm talking about. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm pretty excited about this idea because I think that many of our power users are really going to like it. And I'm going to click right here and load the PGN for this game. And what we have here is the game between Kasparov as white and Sergey Karjakin from day one of the St. Louis Blitz. Now, when I'm analyzing a game at a high level, one of the first things that may surprise some of our users less experienced is I actually start at the end. And I think that this is a recommended system by many of my Russian trainers, and you kind of move backward or forward. At some point, I may jump to the opening, but the reason I start at the end is because I want to see the most critical moments, and so I want to spend a lot of my time making sure that I understood the finale, essentially the reason somebody lost or won or drew a game. So as you can see here, this one is kind of funny. We see all these king and queen moves. I haven't seen this game yet, and so I'm analyzing it from when this perpetual check just started. So let's take a look at this. So obviously knight takes g6 is played here. Looks like this is sort of a practical yet sort of powerful sacrifice by Kasparov from the perspective that it does open up black's king. Hard time believing it, but it looks like after rook takes, queen takes, black already makes the mistake of committing to sort of a perpetual, maybe instead of bringing this queen back here to a square that might help defend against the perpetual. In fact, why in the world did he not just play queen to c6 check? And now when the king moves, no matter where the king... d5 is the key. Okay, so if the king moves, obviously that would not have been the thing. That would have just run into just capturing, and, you know, black is completely winning, up a rook, and the queen guards this square from the pawn. So I've seen that that's the idea. But obviously Kasparov would have played d5, inducing this check, I guess, of queen takes d5, and after king to h2 now. Still have a hard time buying that there shouldn't be some sort of way out of this draw that maybe was missed. So, you know, let's say we play queen a2 check and he backs up the king, I guess either to g1 or h1. Interesting that in the game, the idea that was played by Kasparov to keep his king on the dark square seems to be kind of the key. Because I'm already thinking of a line like this. So regardless, ignore what the computer thinks, everybody. What I'm pointing out is that in a position like this is kind of a key instructive moment. If Kasparov had blundered with a move like this, I'm guessing that the key is that the queen can come to e4 check, and now the queen is on a safe square away from the dynamic potential of the knight. That's really key, because if this knight can't move to a powerful discovered check and unleash a mating net against the king, then probably, obviously not that move, then probably Karjakin's just winning. So after king h2, now we can move the rook to f6 or f7 or something, or let's just go to f7. And I actually really like this move because now if you play knight e5 check, I have rook g7, and Bob's your uncle. I'm sure that Karjakin would be winning here. And if knight e7 check, king here, there's not going to be a mate because the king can get out. So this also looks pretty much totally winning for black. So this is kind of a key point. So if we start backwards to forwards, I'm already learning that the reason, look at the king. Look at the king dance on the dark squares by Garry. He sort of prevents the queen from coming back into a useful position. So he never allows this idea of queen e4 check, does he? But he does allow this queen to c6 check again a second time. But again, I guess the key in all of these queen to c6 check moves... Oh, no, he doesn't. Of course, the queen came to c1, and then he played king h2. So there is no queen check. Okay, yeah. So as we back up, it looks like, indeed, Karjakin did miss that moment, the one moment he had right in the beginning of the combination. Because there's no way to get the queen to c6 check anymore. Right in the beginning of the combination, when I first assessed that something didn't smell right here, I think, indeed, Karjakin misses this chance here to win. And the computers seem to back me up. So let's go back into my variation. Queen to c6 check. The idea is obvious. We're trying to have the queen help with the perpetual. d5, queen takes d5. Though after king h2, I still haven't necessarily solved the problem. right? This is an example of why rook f7 wouldn't work here, everybody, because now white does move the knight with a discovered double check and would pick up the queen. So that sort of point I was highlighting about why Kasparov is avoiding a queen landing on e4, for example, because there would be no discovered check for the knight. So this is kind of advanced, but again, that's what this video series here is about. This is what the video says. This is the behind the scenes. This is the making of, right? This is the director's cut of a video like you see Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura on the chess.com YouTube channel, or like the one you're going to see here. This is the work I put in behind the scenes to really understand the game so that I can deliver a high quality situation, and just learning that maybe providing some insight into this is something that power users who really want to learn some in-depth chess and you know, have more time than for a 10-minute video would appreciate. So, all right, enough explanation. King h2. So am I right about this? How could he get the queen on a useful square? So queen to d2 check also kind of does it. Here I can go to h1 because queen d5 is just where you were before. And what happens if we just move the rook? What's the difference now? What does white get? I mean, this is kind of like my idea before with the queen on e4, but if knight h4 check, I don't have rook g7. Or I do, but now white gets a draw. I'm assuming on the dark squares. But what's going on here? He just takes everything, and I just can't escape, huh? Just a draw. Huh. And if I go too far, I lose. Okay. Interesting stuff. So if that's really the case, then maybe, as much as I loved queen to c6 check, maybe there really is no improvement, despite the fact that the engine's evaluation continues to grow. I want to see what this variation is. Can I see the variation here? I want to see what this variation is here. Queen d1 check, king h2. This is just a bunch of repeating. Ah, no, the queen comes to b2 now that the d pawn is gone, and the queen from b2 actually guards the check. So this is a win. So the point is, now you can just follow with this plan. No matter where you go, eventually the queen gets to this diagonal and captures here. I'm sure that somebody else, if I was actually following this commentary live, I was not watching the show live. If I was actually following this event live, I'm sure, you know, Maurice and everybody else already kind of knew this was the line. But all right, so what we've been able to establish is that the critical moment after this combination was first launched by Kasparov, likely under time pressure, you know, still a practical kudos goes to Kasparov for recognizing the opportunity, whether it works or not. I mean, that's exactly what you should be doing when you're losing and both sides are under time pressure. That said, it was a lost approach because of this one move, queen to c6 check. And what's fascinating is after queen to d2, the king immediately starts hiding on the dark squares. Here the king stays on g1. The queen never has this opportunity to go from d1 to e4 check. And as soon as the queen tries to come back, again, the king stays on the dark squares. Any opportunity that would allow the queen come to e4 check, like that line I analyzed, would lose. And notice the evaluation going way down for Stockfish. Of course, the computers are faulty in these situations because they're never, I mean, I would have to let the Stockfish think for like an hour or something, right? You know, maybe if I was using a more localized engine, Komodo 11.2, perhaps it would find the draw quickly, but that's not relevant to us. What's instructive for us is what's relevant, and that is that Kasparov finds this, you know, really nice and strong, dynamic, practical move, right? We're going to give that an exclam from the sheer perspective that, you know, from the practical perspective that white's position is lost and the 13th world champion is desperate. Nothing could be better than this move. Black is quickly challenged to find the surprisingly, right? I mean, it's kind of surprisingly the one and only approach. The surprisingly one and only approach. And when Karjakin misses it, an amazing draw has been saved by white. So fascinating stuff. So rook takes g3, queen takes g3, and then queen to d2 check, which I am going to give. Is it worthy of 2 question marks? Possibly. I mean, okay, usually 2 question marks is reserved when you've lost a game, but it is something that changes the result of the game, right? And so after the king moves, and just note for the users who are still curious about this, just to remind you, the reason why this is a draw is because after queen takes, king h1, queen h5 check, the point is you can't escape. When the king comes up, you go back to the light square. So despite the fact that the queen is here, this is just a draw. So this is just equal draw. So queen to d1 check, king g2, queen. Well, let's give an evaluation here, and you know, this move, much to the surprise of Sergey Karjakin, loses Black's winning chances. Amazingly, Black's queen never has the right checking opportunity again to retreat to c6 or e4, which would be winning squares. Fascinating and exciting. Love it. So queen to c6. So let's comment before. The winning move was because the protection of the g6 square forces white's hand with 44 d5, which in turn opens the long a1 h8 diagonal and saves Black's win. So this is really key, right? And we will have this analysis available in a link here for all of the users watching this in the first ever behind the scenes making of. What should I call it? Behind the scenes or making of? I don't know. Maybe I'll ask a team member right now. There's a million of them. Let me ask them. Behind the scenes or the making of? Or director's edition. This is the funny conversations I have where my teammates go, Danny, I don't give a bleep what you call it. What matters is that it's going to be interesting content, and now the users are frustrated with you. No, I'm kidding. Everyone loves these behind the scenes. That's what this is. Go grab a beer. Go grab some popcorn. We are in depth in the room right now, analyzing some serious chess. So d5 is the main line. We're going to promote that. And then, you know, we'll go back to promoting the actual move that was played in the game. But the main thing is that in this variation after queen to c6, I want d5 to be the main move because the point is that king h2 loses on the spot to h takes g6. Clearly, Black is just winning now. There's no draw. So d5 is forced. And after queen takes d5, king h2, the key is, I guess, both queen a2 check and queen b2, right? Rook f7 would lose on the spot to knight e7, and white is winning. Queen d2 check is okay, but queen a2 check followed by, we'll just say queen a1 check, the best move, and then h takes g6 changes the game with queen back to g7, and Black is completely winning, having escaped all checks. I'm not going to type that out because we can just say Black is winning, and I don't think anybody needs explanation as to why Black is winning here. So queen a1 check. This is also the variation we want to promote, and okay, so we've got our main line established. This is where the critical moment was. Our first goal is to establish where did the game lose a thread for one of the players, and we have established that with this line. We can just delete this variation. We don't even need queen to b1, and we can say that queen d2 also winning, you know, just to say that, you know, also winning, though less efficient, is queen d2 check, king moves, and then not rook f7, of course, but queen to c1 check, and what do we get? We get queen to c1 check, and then queen to b2 check, and h takes, queen to g7, And game over, Red Rover. I do think this is worthy of note here. Worthy of noting is that this idea fails to any sort of discovered check with the knight, like knight h4 check. And we'll delete this move with perpetual, so just say equal. So okay, so the first thing you've done here as you go over a high-level game is you've established the critical moment, right? So I went through this, you know, when we first started, you saw me, I was backing up from the perpetual. Now I understand what happened, why black lost this, why black lost the thread by not finding 43 queen to c6. And now we kind of scroll back through a little more. So believe it or not, like the number 1 and number 2 priorities, I'm going to be totally transparent when analyzing these things, are to find the critical moment and then to understand the opening for me. And the reason for that is that, I mean, okay, you know, obviously you all know I am a chess educator and chess entertainer by profession, right? And my job is to provide people with the most instructive and hopefully interesting moments of a game. Some of what I do is time sensitive, right? I am literally neglecting 176 emails in my inbox because I went to the doctor today and I don't care. And the thing is, though, that the openings are always instructive because they apply to a lot of users who maybe play that opening, and people just tend to like openings and understanding what happened. And I think I have one of my things that I've tried to work on is I've gotten better at explaining kind of the bigger picture thoughts behind the openings. I think people have appreciated that about some of the videos I've done. But you have to also understand the critical moments of what's happening. Now, I don't know all the other blunders in this game. Sometimes there's other like huge turning points in the middle of the game, and that's super fun and interesting to look at. But once I understand, you know, what the ultimate sort of climax moment was, right? That this knight takes g6 was really a really practical shot by Kasparov. Now I can back up and work my way through some of the other instructive notes I want to make, and so anyway, so that's what I like to do. And now in general, if I was saying high level professional analysis outside of the fact that I am doing all of this work simply for the purpose of preparing to do basically a 10-minute video for the mass majority fans who really enjoy that format, the live video with the analysis as I've done before. If it wasn't for that, you know, you might spend 3 hours on a game like this and dive into everything. Some of them are less interesting, and you don't spend that much time on them. But those are the two biggest things also for your own games. If you want advice from a chess coach, it would be understand what happened, why you lost the game, why you won the game, why you drew the game. Understand the critical moment. And then the opening is you could really rank it as the second most important thing to establish in every game outside of the critical moment because it's the one you can make the most improvements upon right away. You can go over an opening and say, okay, this time I messed up on move 9. The next time you get it, you mess up on move 11 because you went deeper, right? So the opening is a very clear stepping stone to help you get better positions in the middle game and all that stuff. You can literally improve and see improvements game to game incrementally. Whereas in the middle game and in deeper positions that are strategically based and pawn structure and transitions into endgames and super complex stuff, you don't always get that. So again, that's my advice to you both as a chess studier and as kind of what I'm doing, and that's why I focus on those two things first. So now, I didn't even know this was a King's Gambit, and I've been staring at F4 this whole time. I just didn't even realize. I was like literally about to go on a speech about the Ruy Lopez. Awesome! Garry Kasparov played the King's Gambit. How many times has Garry Kasparov played the King's Gambit in his career? I have absolutely too much excitement about this. I need to understand how often Garry Kasparov has played the King's Gambit in his career. I cannot imagine very often at all. I'm using my database search tool over here that you guys can't see off the screen. I'm sorry, I can't record everything. High level recording, but I like literally see like 0 games by Garry Kasparov in the database. I see a number of games by Garry Kasparov as black. Hilarious. Let's check out the opening analysis here. So if you actually click this and open up the master games in a new tab, I can actually now see, let's see. I want to look up the King's Gambit, how many times Kasparov has been white on the white side of the King's Gambit. Literally none. Like, not in our Master Games database, and I can't find any in ChessBase here either off the screen. That's fascinating and hilarious. Okay, awesome. So now we know that f4 is played by Kasparov. A game changer. Searching through my databases reveals that Kasparov has never played the King's Gambit in tournament chess. Checking my sources to confirm. LOL. I'm going to talk to Peter Dockers here on Slack with my team. Peter knows everything. Asking Peter, he'll get back to me. Hilarious. Anyway, have somebody will get back. So just awesome stuff. So the King's Gambit, what is this instructor for you guys? Okay, obviously everyone knows the King's Gambit is just a super aggressive, hyper-aggressive opening. White is sacrificing the weakest area of the board and potentially super dangerous positions for a big center. But it also opens up the potentially most dangerous area of the board for black, right? And so, you know, the King's Gambit is full of some of the most interesting, amazing, double-sided, dynamic victories in the history of chess. So this is fascinating that Kasparov would play this. So e takes f4. The full Monty, as I like to call it. This is literally the Gambit accepted, right? I mean, it doesn't get much more interesting than just taking the pawn. And now the most common moves here, as you will see here, both knight to f3 is common. And what else? d4 is common. Those are the more common moves. Even bishop to c4 is common. So knight f3, bishop c4, but knight to c3 is what was played by Kaspi here. So he plays knight to c3. How often has this been played? So certainly it has been played, and there's a number of games, 238 of them with the move knight to c6. But Karjakin goes all in for the most aggressive line. I mean, from a principled perspective, this is the move that you play. Someone gives you a check, you take a check and destroy White's right to castle, and that's exactly what he did. What we'll note here is that the most principled approach possible. You have a check on move 3. You take a check on move 3 and destroy White's right to castle. That said, these early commitments by the First Lady always lead to dynamic rebound threats by White, gaining tempos on the black queen as she runs around the board. So this is kind of the instructive thing for everyone to understand. We will also note that we'll back up and say that knight to c6 is certainly also possible. So I'm actually going to make sure I'm saving this as we go. I'm just going to make sure that I grab it and just kind of copy my current analysis. So knight to c6, the most popular move in the database is knight to c6. So just noted. So king to e2 is played, and obviously this is still going to be a move. So d5 is a move we know is principled. It's a move that is one very common move because it opens up the bishop. And often when you face these romantic weapons, right, with the kings in the middle of the board, the sooner you can equalize in your own activity, the better. And this is super interesting stuff. So so there you go. d5 is a move that I would think to play. But again, Karjakin playing an interesting move. Queen back to d8 has never been played before. Let me check on the old ChessBase here and see if that's the case. Our database has gotten pretty good and up to date. If you're not using chess.com/analysis, you totally can. It's really gotten really up to date, and we keep it up to date. We really do keep it up to date at a high level, and exactly, and it matches Megabase. So according to both databases that I have, Queen to D8 has never been played. But from a blitz perspective, it's interesting, right? I would say that D5 makes sense. I would also say that D6 makes sense. But from a blitz perspective, Black has destroyed White's right to castle, and now he wants to come back and avoid any preparation by his opponent, right? So I'm going to make a note about that. Interesting stuff. And interesting decision by Karjakin, likely one made to avoid preparation. The point is that Black has already achieved the goal of destroying White's king safety. So why invite tempos and, again, possibly deep preparation? More traditional moves like D5 and D6 are surely good too, but this is a blitz practical move that I like. So despite a super rare line by Kasparov, Karjakin sort of returns the favor with this move, Queen to D8. I forgot to kind of note a rare line / move order of the King's Gambit to go with a rare choice already by the former champ. All of the moves noted below are more common for White. Dun dun dun. All right, so D4, interesting. Me like it, yeah. Knight F6 here, yeah. Right. Okay, so again, there's not going to be anything in the openings database, so that's cool for me. That kind of makes my work a little bit easier. One of the things I really try to do for the users, I try to have a high-level understanding. Sometimes that doesn't always come through in the videos, right? Sometimes people have said, oh, it seems like Danny rushed through this one. But I do try to work hard and deliver quality content, despite the fact that, as you all know, I play a professional idiot on Chess TV. I like to pretend to earn my 2,500 rating from time to time. So Knight F6 is certainly principled. I would expect it to be followed by moves like D5, maybe Bishop to B4, because you want to, again, challenge the big center. That's what White's getting with the sacrifice of F4. And on that note, I would bet that even a move like D5 here is something to consider. Just to show everybody kind of a practical idea in the King's Gambit, often this sort of thing is just a weird way to kind of mix it up. You've opened up the board, you've given back your pawn advantage, and in fact, if they take here, okay, temporarily, you're actually down a pawn, but of course you can win this back. So this is another kind of approach I would expect. So again, I would say that, again, this is more the type of principled move I would expect from Black. This strike back is the most common way to challenge the romantic gambits. So this is, and after this, I would say that, and certainly a line like this would make you excited about having opened the center earlier. But again, Karjakin was staying to roads less traveled to avoid his opponent's preparation. This is my guess, and I think it's probably a right one. So Knight F6 is not a bad move either. After Bishop takes F4, Bishop B4, okay, this also seems pretty principled. You're obviously trying to undermine the knight here so that you can pop into E4, but I don't know how much longer Black can play without striking in the center here. So it's just surprising to me. The computers do tend to like Black in these positions, as you can see. Black has a little bit of an edge here, and that's okay. The big thing is Is there a way for white to just develop something naturally to protect the center? He goes with bishop g5. That's, you know, you defend a threat with a threat yourself, right? You make a pin, and maybe you're going to strike with e5. And you know, I still look at d5 as things that are possible. Karjakin played the move that the computer likes here, and then just a simple d6. So interesting, and I can't begrudge this either from the perspective that, you know, Karjakin achieved his goals with check and backs up. I'm always biased toward positions where one side is going to get their king safe and the other isn't. You know, tons of props, and this is just, again, like, you've seen this natural reaction by me throughout this process of surprise that Kasparov has done this. Awesome, awesome stuff. But I do agree. I mean, I feel this way from a practical perspective. I just tend to like Black's chances in these positions. Of course, I'm also assessing it from an unbiased, you know, professional chess player perspective, not the fact that it's blitz. That's the other reason why Kasparov did it. You know, certainly there's a reason he didn't play the King's Gambit in all of his tournaments, because, you know, it's a blitz opening oftentimes. But okay, again, so I would still say that I'm surprised that d5 wasn't strike, although now apparently if d5 is played, the computer likes it. So you know, let's forget what the computer says and go for this, because this is the most principled move, the one that I find most instructive, and I want to understand why d5 isn't the right move here. So if knight takes d5, okay, that does make sense. We've got two pieces now pointing at the c7 square. Okay, and that prevents knight takes e4. And if we take here and then try to take with the queen, you know, maybe now Black is just going to have to find time to retreating this queen as she gets attacked. And I agree, principled moves like, okay, maybe knight f3, bishop g4, king f2, you get the king out of the file. This is kind of a typical King's Gambit where White's feeling decent, right? White's got more rapid development coming. You're going to get a rook on this e file, maybe even c4 with a center. So this is the kind of position that you start to see White turn the tables, where unexperienced players against the King's Gambit are still thinking, oh, well, that king's still encastled and in the center. But, you know, just a few more natural moves and, you know, even just like natural defensive moves, bishop d3, the rook comes to e1, White is castling by hand and has a very, very solid setup. So this is the kind of thing that makes sense. So maybe now, finally, and as much as I've been wanting and traditionally would be right about this move, it looks like Black has finally missed this boat and should refrain, as Sergey did. For example, 65, knight takes d5. I think this is kind of the key point. Hits c7, right? And now after knight takes, e takes, knight f3, bishop g4, this type of position highlights the potential of the King's Gambit with a solid, active position for the pieces and open lines, while the king is really not going to be in danger. I mean, that's the truth, right? So then you get bishop to g5. Now we're back to this because Karjakin played bishop b4, which I like. So let's continue. Bishop g5, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and d6. Okay, makes sense. Again, less traditional than d5 strikes, a challenge, but makes sense that Black seems to have gotten through the worst of this opening. Practical strategy of playing something weird has worked out, as the position is safe and White needs to complete development with lacking any concrete King's Gambit-ish threats. You know, White doesn't really have a ton here. So knight f3, Rekharovka. Now you got to take, right? Because there's no other real clean way to deal with guarding e4. You could play queen to d3. Oh yeah, okay, you can't just take e4. I was thinking you take e4 because you have rook e8, but of course then bishop takes there. So okay, let's pause the video just for a second. I'm actually being pinged by kind of the only two guys at the company that I got to slow down for, Eric and Jay, the founders, and they want to have a quick meeting. We've been waiting to have this, so I'm going to have this quick meeting, and we'll be right back. Okay, and I'm back. Long Chess Kid, future model, chesskid.com. Not that you would care or know that I was just on the phone for almost an hour. And here we go. So, yeah, so what we were talking about. Kasparov played bishop takes f6 because obviously there were threats on the center, and we decided that queen to d3 was less than ideal for white. We mentioned that we can't just take here, of course, because the pin there, despite what I was thinking about the rook coming to e8. But the rook coming to e8 anyway might be a problem. And also, just from the perspective that you might not be able to hold this center together if if black plays rook e8, then there's threats of bishop f5, and the pawn is pinned. So bishop takes f6 makes sense for white. So we're going to say Kasparov did this. It makes sense. I'll say something about this, just kind of saying the other option of trying to hold the center together was also possible, but likely not attractive to ideas like rook e8, bishop f5, and white likely has to part with the bishop on f6 eventually anyway. Okay, cool. So bishop takes f6 was played, queen takes f6, and now at least white has time, right? So that makes sense. King f2, but here goes Karjakin, immediately c5. I love this move. He strikes against the dark squares, and he's saying, okay, so you made this compromise, which holds the center together longer for you, but by giving up the dark square bishop and activating my queen, I am going to immediately highlight those moments and begin an assault on undermining the dark squares and potentially your weakest pawns on the board, which are, of course, these doubled c-pawns. Love this move, c5. I'm going to give it an exclamation point from a practical perspective, immediately highlighting the absence of the dark squared bishop. A strong move and the beginning of a good middle game for black, from what I can tell. I like it. So, okay, h3 was played. Interesting. The computer's suggesting e5, but I have to tell you, this is just not a human move. Like, it doesn't matter to me that Stockfish said that. Like, I think after takes and the queen moves anywhere, yes, okay, fine, b6, like the computer says. And this is an opening of the dark squares, right? I mean, this is the doubled c-pawns here, and this is just not interesting to me. And I think this is where black's slight edge is maybe, you know, mathematically, computer thinks it's like not as good here as compared to leaving the pressure, but to me, this is the easiest, safest way for black to just be positionally much better. I mean, knight to c6, rook e8, e-pawn is a target, bishop g4. This is just so straightforward. So, I just think that black is just slightly better here with an easy position to play. So h3 makes more sense. White wants to improve the or stop bishop g4 and keep the tension. Rook to e8 was played, queen to d3. So as much as I, again, was super excited about this, game to start for white, Gary's really practical knight takes g6 to kind of create this draw opportunity. And of course, I love seeing the King's Gambit on the board, which, by the way, Peter Dockers has actually confirmed in the meantime of my meeting that he couldn't find any games in the King's Gambit by Kasparov either. So just awesome to see this game. But despite that, I feel like black is just on the road to good stuff, right? Not just because I'm biased to the black side of the King's Gambit, but I just, white didn't get a lot of big initiative, and now you got a king in the center and some weak pawns on the dark squares, right? So b6 is played. That's a weird move to me. Not my favorite move. That seems like a slow move. Like, I have no reason not to just be attracted to a move like knight to c6. So, b6 is, I'm actually gonna give it kind of like a slightly dubious, not exactly sure why Karjakin took this slower approach, though trying to remove the queen from d3 with bishop a6 makes sense. I have a hard time not wanting to just develop aggressively with this move. I think black is just better. Black is just better. What would be my plan, though? With a plan of development and pressure on the C file, maybe. So anyway, interesting stuff. Knight c6 just seems more straightforward. So he plays b6, but as I said, his idea is to bring the bishop to a6 and kick the queen, because the queen is serving a duty here on e4. So that's why Kasparov plays rook e1. Now the bishop comes to b7 instead of a6, and after g3, black continues with this idea anyway with knight to c6. So makes sense. I mean, was there some sort of better option rather than rook e1? Computer keeps coming back to e5 as much as I just don't think that's a realistic human option. I mean, even now it opens up the diagonal further for the king. I'm not going into that. I don't care. It doesn't make sense to me here to play e5. So rook e1 makes sense, and after bishop to b7, g3 is slow, but what else is he going to do? How's he going to get the bishop out, right? If he goes to e2, the e4 pawn hangs. So this was just a tough position for Kaspi. No, I don't want that move. Bishop e2 is just a blunder. Delete move. So g3, knight to c6, bishop to g2. Again, now I would just put a rook on the c file. Oh, look at that. I'm right. Yep, always nice. I wasn't looking ahead, promise. But yeah, that was my plan before, is develop and put pieces on the c file, right? It makes sense to build up on the tension here. You've got a couple of weaknesses to poke at. Not because you're necessarily going to take here and just shoot for tactics like knight b4, though it is maybe possible. But just whenever you've got like a cannon on an open, an open file, potentially, where the weaknesses are going to be there waiting for you, right? Either you force a positionally terrible move like d5, which is just never a happy decision. I don't care if I put that knight on e5, even a5, anywhere that knight goes, you've opened up my queen, you've got these doubled weak c-pawns. This is just getting worse for white on a positional level. So, we'll just say knight e5, and black is, and black is very happy. There, Uncle Sasha's here. Hello, Uncle Sasha. Das Vidanya. Goodbye, Uncle Sasha. Okay, Danny's back. A3 after rook a to c8. Interesting. He's just worse. That's all it is. He's just worse. I mean, a3. Okay, a3 stops the move I just highlighted, I guess, which is takes, and knight b4. But, but I think at this moment it's clear that white has achieved nothing, can no longer be pretending to be happy with his king's gambit choice. And if you are playing passive pawn moves to stop single threats like nb4, then normally you are on the run. Right? I mean, when you're defending an obvious threat with like a not very helpful move overall, you're not able to defend it dynamically by making any kind of threat of your own. I think it's pretty clear that that's a problem. This problem. Uncle Sasha's back. Oh no, get out of here. All right, rook e3. Interesting. Knight to b8 was a strong move, by the way. The computer also seemed to like rook to c7. I just want to note that because this is a computer move that I actually like. A computer move I actually like was, as it clearly follows through with a plan of assault on the C file. Okay, but knight b8 is certainly interesting. Rook e3 is played, obviously, just for defensive reasons, but this is headed down a bad path. Knight to b8 was such a strong move because it's a dual move, right? I'm going to give it an exclam the more I think about it. I mean, this is just, a doubly strong move with threats of bishop a6 as well as opening the C file aggressively. So just a really strong move. Rook e3, knight to d7. He doesn't even play bishop a6. Why not? Why doesn't he go bishop a6? It's interesting. Bishop a6, even though this is kind of a computer line, this is sort of a funny thing you could do in Blitz, where you bring the knight back with the threat of coming into c4 now that the rook's been here. So, okay, though this, it seems like, though this feels like a bit of a computer line, it is an interesting thing to do in Blitz, to repeat moves at times to threaten tricks and make your opponent avoid blunders. Anyway, so knight d7, rook f1. All right, fine. Queen comes back to e7, gets off the frets. I guess white is finally thrilled that he's completing castle by hand, but Karjakin is not afraid to just gobble up the e4 pawn, and probably from here he's just winning until this knight takes g6 blunder. So we're getting down to less interesting stuff. d5 again. Okay, so this has been suggested before by the computer to sort of save the e-pawn, but it just, I mean, I almost puked, right? I just threw up a little bit in the back of my throat. I'm not sure if you heard it through the microphone. I mean, this is just weakness, 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 right? You've got backward pawn, open file, outpost square, doubled ice. This is just like, this is a move that is a positional. Garry Kasparov would never play it because Mikhail Botvinnik would roll over in his grave, come back to the Soviet chess school from which Kaspi was raised, and probably beat the tar out of him. So that's not good. Not that I'm promoting any sort of physical violence over a chessboard or to anybody in any sort of school or anything. It was a completely inappropriate reference by me. I apologize. So all right, anyway, he would beat the tar of him mentally, as only a good Russian chess coach can. Okay, c4 is interesting. I don't even know. I just, you know, a positional, I can just say, just a positional nightmare of a move that, regardless of whether it temporarily saves the e4 pawn or not, simply cannot be played by any self-respecting Russian school boy. Okay. So white has finally completed the castle by hand, but it comes at the price of a clear pawn. Blitz suggests you play this position, and Garry says, all right, well, you've got some practical chances, you've got a pin and everything, but Karjakin plays d5, very strong. Why not? Yeah, just support the bishop, knight h4, g6. I actually like this move. I guess he's just going to give back the e4 pawn. No other options, I assume, here after knight h4. I mean, you could play knight f6, but why even allow knight f5? Why even allow knight f5? I don't know. Yeah, I like g6. Give the pawn back, because the more this position opens up and the smoke clears, what happens, everybody? Open king, weak pawn, weak pawn, weak pawn, weak pawn, right? Right now, you don't notice it, but all of these squares are wide open, and they lead to the king, right? So, you know, let the trades begin, and let the position open up, because at some point, these things are going to become a problem. And Kaspi knows that, so he plays the move queen to g4. Now knight f6 comes with tempo. I like it, which is just going to hold on to the exchange of the e4 pawn, queen to g5, knight h5, okay, sort of forcing the hand. Now if you trade e7, you don't even get to keep your pawn. So he comes back to keep an eye on this. Okay, and Karjakin avoids the three-move repetition, obviously, because that would be unnecessary, and black is just completely winning. Like any good Russian school boy, Karjakin repeats moves with no intentions of actually taking a draw. He now prepares to play moves like f5 and h5 with an extra pawn and a weak white king to attack. Honestly, the more we look at this game, it's just shocking that Karjakin didn't win, right? Why didn't he just take the pawn? I guess we should look at this. I'm guessing a simple move like queen to g4. Oh, he can't even take the pawn. Queen takes c4. I was just miscalculating. Duh. Okay, so he can't even do that yet. It wouldn't really matter. But, yeah, so he's just, yeah, everything we've talked about, the king is open and all that stuff, but he can't even win this pawn yet. Sorry about that. Just a little bit of a hallucination. That's why you do analysis and prepare your work. So the queen comes back to e2. We take and play f5, and where all commentators, I assume, and yours truly officially start predicting Garry's resignation. I mean, this is just so totally lost. Knight to g4, knight to g2. Okay, queen to d6 is fine. Just attack the pawns. Forces c3, which, of course, if you have to play c3, you're cutting off the rook from here. Just totally winning here. I don't even know if this is the most accurate approach by black to go after these pawns, but this is a position where white has no play. Everything is shut down on these files, and a pawn is a pawn, right? So nope, not rook to d3. That is a classic mouse slip. So queen to d2, fine. Knight e6 makes sense. Stops knight f4, by the way. You would just trade. Okay, Kasparov does the right thing. This is exactly the practical thing you do in a completely busted up position. You try to open up things and create some dynamic play. But after knight to g5, okay, this is just getting worse. Are there any other tactics here for black? It's possible. After takes it and rook takes e4, probably you can just continue to gobble. Things like g takes h3. But if you take it, what if white just takes back? Maybe that's why he didn't do it, because he wanted his knight there to actually have a target. So I'm other than the fact that I guess the issue with knight g5 right away is it allows white the possibility maybe he'll take here and sack the exchange. Oh, that's what he did, actually. Look ahead. Yep, there it is. So he did do that. So now I understand why the computer says don't even do that. Yeah, just you know, from a practical point of view, one could argue that this moment here is where Karjakin first loses the thread, allowing white the opportunity to sacrifice the exchange and open black's king. Of course, Karjakin was still winning, so don't get me wrong. But there was really no reason to invite complications, especially in blitz. Playing f takes g4, promote this line. Playing f takes g4, followed by this move, knight g5 now, prevents the game variation of 35 g x f5. Black is in a comfortable driver's seat. That's the difference. So, cut that and let's paste it here. Okay. So g takes f5 was played. I think, again, I think this deserves an exclam. I don't care that he was still losing. You know, losing later or not, this move deserves an exclam because you don't have to ask Garry twice to create practical chances. Right? So knight f3 check, rook takes, rook takes f3. And okay, rook f8. Black is losing here. I mean, sorry, white is losing here. He's down the exchange. This guy's hanging. This guy's hanging. We already know kind of what happens in a few moves. Certainly, this move reminds us that Danny can't type. Move reminds us that black is just winning, but I already feel less comfortable than I did before. So, you know, he just didn't create the best chances there. But knight h4, queen e7, all truth being told, I mean, okay, this is a nice solidifying move. Queen g5 check. What else is he going to do? He plays rook to g3. You know, looks fine. Queen to c1, king up, he takes here. It's just over. I mean, this is red over, right? But what else is white going to do? I mean, white's going to play king h2 instead of rook g3. Yeah, the computer just recommends a5. Go get a queen. Yeah. I don't disagree necessarily if black has nothing. But you can see, though, like, you know, without playing moves like king h8, king, those aren't fun moves to play under time pressure when there's weird threats. Okay, maybe they're not actual threats, and these guys are high-level calculators. They don't get away with being general, right? But, you know, it's a tricky position to play in blitz when there's threats. That's my point. Karjakin invited a little bit of an unnecessary mess. rook g3, makes matters worse. Should have made matters worse for white, but Garry was already eyeing his practical chance on g6. I mean, that's clearly the point, right? So king h2, it's possible that king h2 prolongs the misery longer, but I respect Garry's choice of 40 rg3. Da, welcome back, Uncle Sasha. Da, thank you. Spasiba. Dobry den. All right, das vidanya. All right, king g2, rook takes c3, knight takes g6. And from here, we have already analyzed the game. We understand that black should have just been winning. So, okay, I mean, at this point, maybe we went through a couple of these other moves so fast, but you can't really criticize either player. They're both following through on pretty straightforward ideas. Again, it comes back to, probably this is just, allowing g takes f5, I think was just a mistake. Oh, why do I keep doing that? I keep pressing the wrong key. Allowing g takes f5 was just unnecessary by Karjakin, but okay, still winning, and we already established queen to c6. So now what we do is we grab this PGN and I save it for my own records, of course, because that's exactly what I do. I save this game and replace the game that I already have, and I also can share the URL directly to everything I did. I am copying this and show you when you paste it, it'll bring you up a new game with all the analysis Danny did. So you can look in this YouTube video and find the full game analyzed. So, in fact, I'll even share it with our boy Peter Doggers. He can use it for game of the day analysis. And there you go. Thanks for watching the first ever director's cut, behind the scenes, the making of, whatever we're going to call this. I don't even know. It's going to be fun. I like this idea because it's work that I have to do anyway to provide quality chess education and have integrity about what I try to teach you guys. But it's also kind of interesting, right? And of course, it's a little bit haphazard. You get the casual, real moments of Eric and Jay calling me for a meeting that they delayed for 4 hours, by the way. And then, of course, they call me to go over Chess Kid B2B. You can see our Google Doc right there. I'm not going to click on it and show you our plans. I'm not going to click on it. I love you, though. All right, people. Peace out. Goodbye. Go check out the actual recording of this video at the chess.com YouTube channel if you're watching this on my channel.